Welcome to the Midweek Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, I want to talk about when fear shows up as anger. This is an experience that very many of us have faced or are currently facing, but very few of us have the language for, Those moments when you snap, when you just feel irritated over something that at the back of your mind, is small, when you shut down or you withdraw, or when your tone gets sharper and you're just like, where did that come from? I've had those moments where I will snap at someone during the day, and when I get back home, I'm like, where was that from? I also have somebody I care about very deeply in my life who I believe is battling this. And so that's why I went on a deep dive to recognize it in my own life, but also to figure out how to be a better support system, right, for this person. So as you listen to this episode, you may not currently be facing it in a huge way, but this could help you be more supportive of somebody who's having fear show up as anger. Yeah, most of the time when you snap at people, when you experience these moments of anger, it's normally not just anger. It's fear dressed up as anger to protect you. And that's what I want to unpack in this episode, right? And I some time back did a lot of deep diving into anger because it was one emotion that I didn't know how to feel, and then after feeling, communicate to people who have made me angry, right? And one of the things that I found so interesting is that psychology teaches us that anger is often a secondary emotion. This means that it often sits on top of softer or more vulnerable emotions that we just don't feel safe enough to show. So these emotions could be fear, could be hurt, could be shame, could be disappointment, could be feeling of powerlessness, could be anxiety, could be just that you're feeling overwhelmed, right? And so your mind kind of goes like, hey, I can't show that emotion. This is not a safe enough space for me to be vulnerable and show that soft emotion. And so your body then goes, okay, let's show anger instead, right? So anger becomes this armor. It's your body's way of saying, I'm protecting you, right? So let's bring it back home. A lot of us were raised in environments where fear wasn't safe to express, right? So we grew up hearing things like, you've got to be strong, you're going to handle it. No matter how tough it gets, you just take it and go. We didn't even see the adults in our lives express feelings of fear. Ask yourself, when you were a kid, when you were growing up, when you were a minor, the adults around you, was there ever a moment they told you, I'm scared? Or you heard them communicate this, right? Was there ever a moment you heard them communicate that they were hurt, or they were feeling shame, or they were feeling anxious, or powerless, or they were overwhelmed? No. So we didn't even have examples growing up of what it looks like to feel those other emotions. So we almost don't have the terminology for it, but our body feels it, right? And we grew up knowing that you're just not meant to show those emotions because that was synonymous with you showing weakness. And so what happens is we learned how to bury fear. We learned how to hide hurt. We learned to silence vulnerability. But one thing I know for sure about emotions is that they do not disappear. Even if you ignore them for how long, it can take you years. Trust me. There was an incident I experienced where people in my life arrived in a way that I didn't appreciate, and it angered me. Do you know it took me 2 years to feel that anger? 2 years, 24 months. Let me tell you, you can bury the emotions all you want. They will not disappear. They will leak out. And what leaks out most easily is anger. Because subconsciously, we feel like anger looks strong, as opposed to fear that looks fragile and weak. I mean, we grew up seeing our mothers, our fathers, our aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas express anger loudly, right? But underneath that anger, perhaps what was there was exhaustion. What was there was fear. Maybe it was generational survival. But anger is what showed its face. And there's something that therapists use called the anger iceberg. So just imagine a picture of an iceberg. The tip can be seen above the water, but there's a whole lot of it that we can't see that's under the water. So this anger iceberg says that above the water, which is what the world sees, is irritability, snapping, stonewalling, rage, sarcasm, withdrawal. But when we go below the water, which is what's actually driving it, what real emotion is there, what we find is fear, shame, stress, betrayal. You're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling loneliness, grief, even anxiety, feeling out of control. When you ask yourself, maybe, why am I so angry these days? Maybe that's not the right question. And maybe a better question might be, what am I afraid of right now? Or what do I feel ashamed about right now? Or what wound got touched? That last question is the one that got me to like pause, because I feel like end of 2023, I had like anger just come up to the surface. And in that moment, I didn't handle it correctly. I didn't ask the right questions. I was actually so shocked by my anger because, as I told you, it's not an emotion I knew how to touch or feel. So it shocked me. I was just like, alas, kumbe, I can be angry. You know what I mean? And whereas the question I should have been asking at the time is what wound got touched? And that would have saved me a whole lot of destructive anger. You know what I mean? And I feel like asking the better question then opens the door to healing. Now, there are very many different ways anger shows up, and not everybody experiences anger in the same way. So, there are about 4 common phases of anger. There's the one we all know, which is like explosive anger, loud, shouting, snapping. You know, you feel the frustration rising up quickly. The second phase of anger is the quiet anger. This one is a bit harder to spot in others, right? But very many people experience this, where you just go silent or you withdraw, you completely shut down. There's also passive anger, where there's like sarcasm here, or passive aggressive responses, coldness. And then there's this one, which I feel like is really the most heartbreaking, internalized anger. This is where you turn it inward and you start self-blaming, hyper independence. Hey. Perfectionism, overworking. Some of these we don't even recognize as phases of anger, because the one that we're socialized to see a lot of is like the explosive anger, but it can exist in other ways, right? And sometimes the reaction, dependent on what phase of anger is more common for you, you might find that the reaction feels bigger than the situation. Either for you, like afterwards when you go and reflect, you're just like, where? And you start apologizing because where? I took things too far, 0 to 100 real quick. And there's a reason for that. Now, if you have experienced trauma or high stress, or even like an unstable or chaotic childhood, right? The part of your brain that is there to monitor dangerous situations becomes extra sensitive. So to the rest of the world, the situation looks small and looks like a small trigger. But to you, because of all of the years of trauma, high stress, or even the unhealthy childhood, this small trigger to you feels like a big threat. So your body goes straight to anger, because it's like, yo, we need to protect this situation. So I really don't like the stereotype of when somebody reacts, we're quick to say, oh, they're just dramatic. No. Maybe it's just an overwhelmed nervous system. Imagine, like, I think understanding this made me have a lot more compassion for others when I have the capacity to, because it's not all the time that I have the grace. There are times, even me, my nervous system is overwhelmed. So we're going toe to toe, but just understanding that and understanding that the situation that is in front of me has many layers that I may not be privy to, and because of heightened tension and emotions in this moment, I may not be able to understand it now. We may need air and we may need space, and then we'll circle back, you know? Now that I've told you all about this, like, what do we do? What can help? And I did a deep dive to find some of the tools that therapists use. And there's one of them that really works well for me. I'll tell you which one. It's the third one. So let's start with number one. Cindy. So the first thing that can help is to name the primary emotion. Okay. So the emotion that is at the bottom of the iceberg. Because in this situation, because we said, remember earlier, sometimes anger is a secondary emotion. So what's the one that's at the bottom? So instead of saying, I'm angry, start naming this primary emotion with a sentence that starts with, I'm scared, or I feel rejected, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel unappreciated. Actually, now that I say this one, I've actually done it when I'm trying to figure out what am I feeling. And sometimes I'll say I'm frustrated. Then I'm like, actually, no, that's not the one. And I'm like smelling around my nervous system to figure out what it is. This can actually help because anger softens immediately when you name the primary emotion accurately. So I'll say them again. I'm scared. I feel rejected. I feel overwhelmed. I feel unappreciated. The second thing is to pause before reacting. This is difficult because 0 to 100 happens really quick. But even if it's a 10-second breath that interrupts fight mode being activated, it can go a long way. The third thing is the one that I do, which is grounding your body. Put your feet flat on the floor, take a slow breath in, and then hold it, and then exhale for longer than your inhale. And just keep doing that until you feel. I like to say that this normally feels like, for those of you who drive, when you put the handbrake down of your car and it feels like your car was like squeezing its ass. Then you put the handbrake down and it's like it's released, you know? Very strange way of explaining it. But I know you get me. I know you get me. It feels like I can breathe. That's what it feels like when I do my breath work. And sometimes I'll do it like even when I'm in bed and before I fall asleep, I might revisit a situation that's stressing me or that I'm anxious about, and I catch myself and I'm like, let's breathe. Please, we're going to bed. We want to dream happy dreams. Let's us ground ourselves. Sometimes I even go outside to my flower garden and I step barefoot outside just to ground myself. I've done that in the middle of phone calls that have made me feel overwhelmed. I go right outside. Like I could still be holding the phone. I go outside and I step on the grass barefoot, you know? So this one, tried and tested for me, really works. The other thing that you can do is to ask yourself what need wasn't met, you know, because often anger is just unmet needs shouting loudly. And maybe it's you needed reassurance or you needed clarity or you needed rest. That one for me. Or you needed support or you needed to feel safe. I feel like when you ask yourself what need wasn't met, if it's a situation where it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or even at work or with a business partner, when you ask yourself this question, it helps you identify what the issue is, and then you become better at communicating it to the person involved or parties involved to say, I needed clarity on ABCD. I don't feel supported. I need to feel more supported, or I needed reassurance, or I needed rest. Guys, I'm out for a week. The fifth thing is to give yourself compassion. We're so good at giving other people compassion, but not ourselves. You are not a bad person for getting angry. You are a human being whose body is trying to protect them. And then the sixth, which I'll always advocate for, talk about it with someone safe. Maybe you have a therapist, maybe you have a friend, maybe you have a partner who is a safe space for you. Please use your discernment, because sometimes the people around you are not a safe space. They just happen to be around you. Find a safe space and talk about it. And that expressing, and I'm not saying in a trauma dumping way, safe spaces allow you to share and you will just feel lighter instantly. As we wrap up this episode, I want you to ask yourself this week. Where has fear been showing up as anger in my life? That's the question number one. Number two, what am I actually feeling underneath my reactions? So what's the primary emotion? What's underneath the iceberg, under the water? Question number three, what would happen if I treated my fear with softness instead of shame? I hope you remember that you deserve gentleness, you deserve emotional clarity, and you deserve to live a life where you can give yourself compassion. Now, if you resonated with this episode, feel free to subscribe wherever it is you're listening to this on. And if you know someone who needs to listen to this, share it with them and drop in the comments what part resonated. Is there a part that you felt like I was speaking directly to you? Thanks for listening to the Midweek Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.